He requires no introduction, but I am duty bound to still introduce him. I'm the Ashok Vishan Das. I'm founder director of EGROW Foundation. So let me start with Professor Mahendra Dev. He holds the PhD in economics from Delhi School of Economics and postgraduate from Yale University, USA. Specialized in development economics, agriculture, policy, poverty, and inclusive growth. Currently, he is the chairman of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, and he has served in the IGIDR for 12 years from 2010 to 22. Prior to this, he was chairman of Commission for Agriculture, Cost and Prices in the Ministry of Agriculture from 2008 to 2010, and I take proud privilege of being one of his successor, not immediately, but after some time I stepped into his shoes, though I could not fill, but in humble way. So I take pride in succeeding in later time. That's a great thing, and it was a joy. His main area of interest are development economics, agriculture economics, macroeconomics. He has around 150 research publication. He has written or edited 23 books. His book Perspective in Equitable Development was released by former Prime Minister of India. He is also PhD from DE School and postdoctoral from Yale University, USA. The list of his achievement is endless, but for the sake of brevity, I just summarize very few points. Now, coming to the author of the day, Dr. Gurucharan Manna. He is an officer of Indian Statistical Service of 1980 batch, and he holds the MStat degree from Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. He joined the ministry, MOSPI, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation in 90. So he has rich experience of over 45 years. He has completed 45 years in the government and elsewhere, wherever he is. So that gives a measure of his depth and width of the knowledge in statistics. He currently joined after becoming the DG, the Director General of Central Statistical Office, and thereafter, when he handed the boot from government, he joined NCAER as a senior advisor. He was the Director General of CSO and NSSO in Government of India. Dr. Manna is currently member of the Ministry of Statistical Standing Committee on Labor Force Statistics, the working group of NSS 75th and 76th round, the NSSO's Standing Committee on Labor Force Statistics, and the Labor Bureau's expert group on the quarterly employment survey. Dr. Manna has a specialized experience in sample design, estimation procedure for household and establishment survey, the design of survey questionnaire and related document for field work and data validation. Over the years, his responsibility at NSSO, CSO have included the compilation of GDP estimates, conduct of sixth economic census, technical coordination and supervision of ASI, that is Annual Survey of Industries, energy statistics, and infrastructure statistics, compilation of index of industrial production and the index of service production, finalization of survey methodology and reports of NSSO socio-economic survey, and compilation of foreign trade statistics. So the list is endless. You name any official statistics, he has rich experience in that field. That is all I can summarize very, very briefly. Now, let me give a few thoughts about the book which I had the privilege of going through. And this book, 75 Years of Indian National Sample Survey, Evolution of Sample Design, Key Challenges and Way Forward. It's simply a masterpiece. It gives a very rich exposition, excellent exposition. The evolution of sample design. It traces the methodological journey of the National Sample Survey since its inception in 1950. Most of us who are attending this might not have born, and explores how sample designs evolved to accommodate changing socio-economic content and data needs. He discusses major redesigns in response to technological advances and policy shift. On global comparison, he compares India's survey practices with those of other countries in areas like household expenditure and labor force survey, highlights best practices and innovation from international statistical system. He also discusses pilot survey and lessons learned, which are very important. It includes a dedicated chapter on 3 pilot survey conducted by NSS, showcasing experimental approaches and methodological refinement, offers insight into the data quality, non-response issue, and field level challenges. And he talks about, because he is a man of precision, so he very vividly talks about the precision in and estimation. And examines the design-based estimation techniques used in NSS and role of multipliers in generating national level statistics, and evaluate the precision of key estimate, especially in employment and consumption data. I don't want to steal the thunder, so thunder lies with Dr. Manna. With these few words, may I request the chairman of the session, Professor Mahendra, to take over and then conduct the session. Over to you, Professor Mahendra.
Thank you, Dr. Vishan Das, for your kind words. Good evening and welcome to this EGROW webinar on 75 years of the Indian National Sample Survey, written by Dr. Manna. So at the outset, I thank the EGROW Foundation for inviting me to this webinar. Let me also congratulate and compliment Dr. G.C. Manna for this excellent book on 75 years of the Indian National Sample Survey. So I've been using NSS data since the early 1980s, since my PhD days at Delhi School of Economics, almost around 4 decades or more. I've been using this data. So I'm happy to know that NSS completed 75 years and a book has been written. And you can't have a better person than Dr. Manna with his vast experience in Indian statistical system, and who has made invaluable contributions to the official statistical framework, particularly the NSS. So with the growing economy, data requirements have increased significantly, and there is a need for data to have quality, credibility, timeliness, and adequacy. These are important for data. So apart from the usefulness of a particular topic like employment, but many of the surveys are also used for GDP estimation. MOSPI, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, is doing a wonderful work. On major surveys, there are of course 2 types of surveys, the enterprise surveys and household surveys. So enterprise surveys like annual survey of industries, it's a formal sector, and annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises, this is informal sector for non-agriculture. And third, they are starting now, is annual survey of service sector. This is a new one, the formal sector thing. And on major household surveys, we have periodic labor force surveys on employment and household survey on consumption expenditure surveys. So now it's going to start household income survey. In recent years, particularly, it has done several surveys. The frequency of surveys has increased. Now we have monthly PLFS report on employment, which is a good thing. And also last 2 rounds on household consumption surveys, we had 22, 23 and 23, 24 2 rounds. And MOSPI is also using non-conventional data sources, because the rapid advances in technology have given rise to non-conventional data sources, offering new opportunities for data-driven decision making. So non-conventional are like, in Earth observation, like satellite images, mobile telecommunications, call records, social networks, and citizen-generated data. So many of these are considered big data, large volumes of unstructured information that require new capacities for their analysis. So the non-conventional data sources become an opportunity to complement the existing official data available with the statistical community. So in recent years, there has been a need for better convergence of data arising from these two types of sources, conventional and non-conventional. Of course, we have now AI and data centers, and this can also be used. In the next 1 or 2 years, good news is that we are going to have a CPI, IIP, and GDP with new base. CPI, the Consumer Price Index; IIP, the Indian industrial production. So we are going to have a new base. So for policy purposes, recent base is important. So turning to Dr. Manna's book on 75 years of NSS. So basically, it talks about 4 aspects. Of course, he will give a detailed presentation. So one is key features of the survey methodology, and second, it also highlights the strengths and also some of the what are the limitations of data collected through NSS. Third, of course, we can also have global best practices. Where the data, the best practices. And lastly, he outlines the way forward to address critical data gaps to further strengthen the NSS database. So all the chapters are important, but chapter 9 is the most important one, which discusses the challenges and way forward. And basically, the experience of NSS in the last 75 years is useful. But all of us also want to know more about strengthening NSS data further by addressing the critical gaps, if any. So chapter 9 discusses, he will of course be presenting. First one is underestimation of population by the NSS compared to census. For example, the difference between this NSS and census is about 28% in urban in PLFS 23-24. Second is, of course, surveys on household consumption expenditure. Recently people are talking about comparability of recent surveys, 22-23 and 23-24 surveys compared to 2011-12 survey. Because I was in the working group for these later surveys. So what was happening is last, 2011-12 and all, we are having one visit to the households. It used to take more than 2 hours to have the questionnaire and then answers by the household. But in this service, we thought we'll have 3 rounds. The one on food, second on consumer durables, and the rest. So the survey was conducted 3 parts. So because what happens is if you have more than 2 hours and all, there is a fatigue. You underestimate the non-food expenditure particularly. So we thought small kind of surveys for 45 minutes and all. So then of course then it becomes non-comparable. But on the other hand, the second going 3 times is better than going 1 time. And for unemployment rates and work participation rates, in some of the smaller states and union territories, samples may not be enough. He discusses that because the relative standard error is high. And fourth is female participation rates are relatively low in India. Maybe more probing questions, he says, can help in capturing the female participation rates better. And lastly, newer data requirements, how to measure the size of gig workers and how to value the unpaid domestic and caregiving services, and also some of the issues in enterprise surveys, and the lot of interest on income now after the announcement of survey and income. So how to tackle the problems in collecting income data. So some of these issues he raises in chapter 9. So with this, in fact, I was part of the book release function organized by Institute for Human Development, where we discussed also some of these issues. So I'm happy again to be part of this webinar. Thank you very much. So with this, I request Dr. Manna to give his presentation.
Thank you, everyone. At the beginning, let me first thank EGROW Foundation for requesting me to present some of the findings what I have documented and suggestions in my book. I am thankful to Professor Mahendra and my friend Dr. Bishan Das. I see them from a distance. This book, let me tell you, before I go into the chapters of the book and some important messages, what I want to convey through the book. You see, this book I have written keeping in mind a variety of readers. It could be students, they could be researchers, or even the data producers. As Chair was telling in chapter 9, entire chapter 8 and 9 of the book is basically for data producers and also, of course, for the data users. They should be cautious in using some of the estimates where standard errors are very high. So it is a book written for a variety of readers. The book I have tried to be a little, what should I say? I did not make it very lengthy book. So that it is manageable and people have time to go through the book. I don't know. Slides are not moving. Why? Yes. Can you see the slide now?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. This book has basically, as you see in the screen, it has 9 chapters. Chapter 1 is introduction. Chapter 2, I have written chapter 2 keeping in mind the students and even the researchers who may be interested in carrying out some survey. What are the important things they should keep in mind when they have to organize a sample survey? So I have documented the major features of the national sample survey in chapter 2, and that will give clear idea about anybody about how a sample survey in fact should be organized. Chapter 3, because as you see, the thrust of the book is on evolution of sample design. So chapter 3 is a bit lengthy one. It gives a glimpse of sample design starting from NSS first round, which was during October 1950 to March 51, till the current round. What I have done, I will come to chapter 3. I have divided this 75-year period into 4 phases. And from each of these phases, I have picked up some important NSS rounds, taking very important subjects, and what type of sample design was adopted in those surveys to select the villages, urban blocks, and even the households or enterprises. So this chapter gives a fair idea about how the sample design evolved in the NSS over time and where we are now. Since it is a lengthy chapter, I thought a small chapter is necessary, highlighting the major changes in the NSS sample design during the 75 years, as per my own understanding. So chapter 4 is a small chapter. I think it will give the readers a flavor of what were the major refinements in the NSS sample design over time. Chapter 5, as GR was telling, I have documented the method of the pilot survey methodology on 3 pilot studies conducted by the NSSO. I will come to that little later on, and what are the experiences from those pilot surveys. And we also thought that a chapter on global survey practices should be useful so that we can compare the best practices with what NSS is doing for some of the important surveys. In fact, in this chapter, I wanted to cover 3 subjects. One is household consumer expenditure. Another is labor force survey, that is employment unemployment survey here. And also I wanted to cover enterprise survey, how the other countries are doing. Unfortunately, I did not get much of material from the national statistics offices on the enterprise survey details. So I had to be satisfied with only 2 subjects, that is consumer expenditure and employment unemployment. So that is chapter 6. Chapter 7 is a very small chapter. if anybody wants to tabulate the unit level data, what is the concept of multiplier, how from unit level data one should arrive at the aggregates or the ratios or even percentage distributions, those are discussed briefly in chapter 7. And finally, chapter 8 and chapter 9, as I was telling, these are basically, these I have written keeping in mind both data users as well as data producers. In chapter 8, I have documented the experiences from the recent NSS surveys on employment, unemployment, household consumer expenditure, and other type of surveys, including the disability, farmer survey, etc. What are the what is the level of precision of the important estimates? And if the precision is not satisfactory, what type of steps should be taken so that we can improve in the future surveys? Those are basically discussed in chapter 8. And finally, chapter 9 is on challenges and way forward. Okay. Coming to chapter 1, I will basically more focus on chapter 8 and 9 because as chairman was telling, chapter 9 is very important one, even for data producers as well as the researchers. Chapter 1, I started with briefly the statistical system in India and how NSS got started. Actually, as you know, Professor Mahendra was instrumental in creating the National Sample Survey. He was chairing National Income Committee. In their report, what they submitted to government, they found that actually that for GDP calculations, they had, in the early days, very scanty data were available, particularly for the unorganized sector. So the National Income Committee, particularly Professor Mahalanobis, suggested that a sort of national level survey should be introduced, and with the active support of our first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru, the NSS got started in 1950. So this is the history of NSS, and finally what happened, as you know, earlier the data collection was with the field aspect part was handled by Directorate of National Sample Survey, which was within the government of India. But the survey designing, questionnaire designing, report writing, everything was taken care of by ISI. This process created certain difficulties. Those days, advanced computers were also not there. Report writing was getting delayed and all. So finally, a three-man committee suggested that all the activities, starting from field work to even data processing, planning of the survey, report writing, everything should be brought under a single organization, and that's how NSSO came into existence. And of course, I have briefly discussed about organizational structure of the NSSO and also the activities of the NSSO, about the socio-economic survey. As you know, they conduct annual survey of industries, and also the urban frame survey, which is the frame for selection of urban blocks in the NSS surveys. And also NSSO field operations division particularly, they carry out sample checks on area enumeration and crop estimation survey. That is also briefly the methodology and sample size, etc. These are discussed in chapter 1. Coming to chapter 2, as I told you, this is written basically for those who may be interested in organizing a sample survey, and I have documented the NSS salient features on the sample design, what should be taken into consideration. I have talked about the geographical coverage, how NSS surveys define rural and urban areas, the method of sampling. Then one unique feature of the National Sample Survey is that state governments participate in the NSS survey on a matching sample basis. Almost all the states, barring 2-3 small UTs and all. So state participation, when they started joining the NSS, all those things we have discussed in the book. And NSS, one beauty is that there is a sort of technical body at the helm of the affairs. Earlier there was governing council. Nowadays, you know, National Statistical Commission is there. And of course, NSS every round they create some working groups, etc. Nowadays, of course, system has been a little bit changed. They have permanent technical groups on household surveys and enterprise surveys. One beauty of the NSS survey is that it is the sample selected in any round is a random sample. By random sample, I mean every village and urban block in the country has some chance of inclusion in the sample. So anything is possible depending on random numbers. Let me give one instance of NSS first round. This I told during the book release function also. It is written in the first round report. In the NSS first round, that was a survey of rural areas only. NSS first round, second round did not cover urban areas of the country. In the first round, about 1800 villages were selected randomly. And there were some villages in Kalahandi district of Orissa, which was located in a far-flung areas. I mean, the investigators had to go through the wild forests under the protection of armed guards, and they had to walk for about 20 miles to reach the village. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh also there was a village in the hilly area where the field investigator had to wait for the snow to melt down to cross over the Himalayas to reach the sample point. So this is, even the current surveys, there will be many samples where it may be very difficult to reach. It takes time. So that is the randomness of the sample. That is the beauty of NSS sample survey. In this chapter, I have given a history of all the surveys starting from first round till today. And finally, about the achievements of the NSS, I think the biggest achievement is that NSS gives the unit level data free of cost to the public. Anybody can access unit level data. NSS reports are all documented. These are all placed on the websites. Very transparent procedures, and NSS has collected a lot of information. Database is so rich that many scholars have used this data not only for their PhD research purposes and for any other purposes. And I think I remember I have written it in the book also. If achievements of the NSS have to be summarized in one sentence, I think we may remember what Professor Deming said way back in 1973. He said that no country, developed, underdeveloped, or even overdeveloped, they have such a wealth of information about its people as India has. So this is a big compliment to the NSS in the words of Deming, and also we believe so. As regards the sample design, as I told you, this is the main thrust of the book, how the sample design evolved over time. This book, in this book, what I have done, the 75-year period, I have grouped in the period into 4 phases. First phase is first round till 1972, which is around 26th round. Why I picked up 26th round is that next round, by that time, governing council came into existence. Governing council took care of the, supervising everything, particularly the sampling, questionnaire designing, everything was being taken care of by the governing council. With their approval, the survey used to start. So that's why I picked up to 72 as the first phase, 72 to 99-2000, that is the second phase. The terminal year coincides with the NSS 55th round. 55th round was a survey on employment, unemployment, and consumer expenditure. And 55th round created a controversy, many of you may be remembering, on the consumer expenditure survey. Regarding the reference periods, you see for some of the food items, in the 55th round, there are 2 types of reference periods, last 7 days as well as last 30 days. And the data for both the reference periods were collected from the same households. This created a controversy. Many scholars started writing that this must have corrupted the data. Maybe investigator collected data for the 7-day reference period, converted into 30 days. This type of article came in the news and media. Even Angus Deaton and many other scholars wrote about this. So the practice was changed. from the subsequent consumer expenditure survey. Third phase is up to from 56th round to 74th round, that is 2016-17. Why I picked up 16-17 as the terminal year? Simply because that from the next year, the high frequency survey started, the periodic labor force survey. So these are the 4 phases. And in the last column, I have indicated how many rounds I have discussed the sample design in my book. So quite a few rounds I have picked up and important surveys. And I have discussed in detail the sample design, how the villages were drawn, how strata were formed, how households were selected. All those things are documented. So this will give a fairly good idea about how NSS design evolved over time and where we are now. This is about chapter 3. Coming to chapter 4, here I have summarized, as you know, as I told you, basically the salient features of the survey methodology. I mean, what are the major changes in terms of stratification, in terms of number of stages of sampling. As you know, currently NSS, the first stage units generally are villages and urban blocks. But from 76th round, you see, they have partitioned the village into, they call it sub-units. This is a desk exercise. And they are selecting sub-units as the first stage unit, not the village or urban block. This is a change they have made in 76th round, and it is being followed in many rounds subsequently. But otherwise, in most of the surveys, you will find the first stage units are villages in the rural area and urban frame survey blocks, or sometimes census enumeration blocks in the urban areas. But in the very early few rounds, instead of selecting villages or urban blocks as the first stage units, they selected tehsils in the rural areas as the first stage unit, and second stage unit was village in round 4 to 7. Similarly, urban areas, instead of selecting urban blocks as the first stage units, they selected towns as the first stage units. And within selected towns, they selected urban blocks. This was during round 3 to 8. Coming to stratification, see, from NSS 28th round, rural area, every district is a stratum. Prior to that, it was a group of districts. But from 28th round, you see every district is a stratum, and one can theoretically generate district level estimate. In urban area, you see from 28th round, basically for most of the rounds up to 60th round, NSS region and town size class combination was a stratum. I mean, as you know, there are, as of now, about 87 NSS regions. Each region is a group of district. So within a region, they grouped the towns according to population, like big cities, million plus cities. Each of them is a stratum like that, and other cities, they are grouped into according some town size classes based on population. This is the stratification they followed. And in the PLFS, time use survey and ASUS, instead of district, they considered NSS region as the stratum. These are basically, I have discussed what are the changes in the stratification, sampling issues and all basically here, chapter 4. Coming to, I think I have to be a little brief, pilot study, chapter 5. I have discussed 3 pilot study experiences. One is, you see, pilot study on income, consumption and savings. It was in 83-84. It was a study conducted in 5 states and 2 metro cities. One major finding of this survey is that for rural area, you see, average income of the households, estimated income, was significantly lower than the average estimate of consumption plus savings. Ideally, two should be matching each other. Income should be equal to consumption plus savings. But rural area, the situation was very alarming. In fact, income estimate was 30% lower than the consumption plus savings average. But in urban areas, they more or less matched. This is the major finding. Another pilot study was, as you know, in the consumer expenditure survey, we have different reference periods. For food items, in most of the rounds they have gone earlier, they were considering month as the reference period. But there are 50, some rounds like 51st round, 52nd round, and so on, up to 54th round, where you see they had 7 days as the reference period for some food items like vegetables, spices, etc. And for remaining food items, they had 30 days. And a decision was to be taken whether 7 days would be better or 30 days will be better. So this pilot study gave quite interesting results. I am not going into details of it, but main message is that in this pilot survey, they developed one monthly schedule, there was a weekly schedule, and there was also daily schedule. I mean, I'm not going into details. In the book, it is written. Just message is that you see the week-based estimates of fruits, spices, vegetables. That is average consumption per household or per person. These week-based estimates are found to be appreciably higher than the monthly estimates. And week-based estimates of average MPC on fruits, spices, vegetables, etc., they were found to be very close to average expenditure on those food items based on the daily schedule. What is this daily schedule? Daily schedule, there are two schedules. In one schedule, they call it schedule number D3, another is D4. The schedule D3, this was canvassed on 3 consecutive days with previous day as the reference date on consumption. And D4 schedule was canvassed on each of the consecutive 4 days. This way 7 days was covered. And selected households were given the diary, pen and paper, I mean pen also, to write down the expenditure. They were given some containers to measure the rice used for consumption or even the milk consumed, like that. So daily schedule gave a more reliable result. And finding is that week-based reference period for fruits, spices, vegetables, this gave an estimate which was found to be very near to the daily reference period based estimate. So this pilot study gave a fair idea that for fruits, spices, vegetables, etc., 7 days would be a better reference period. And after this pilot study, NSS, through type 2 schedule, they have used this as the reference point. Okay. Another alternative approach of data collection on GVA, I will skip this. I mean, message is that you see they tried some, through this pilot survey, they wanted to see whether factor income based approach gives a better result or not. And there was enterprise schedule where in one set of enterprise they collected receipts data, in another set they collected expenditure data. Unlike the present schedule or traditional schedule where both receipts and expenditure are collected from the same enterprises. And this experimentation did not succeed. This approach gave a sort of inferior figure than the production-based approach. Global survey practices, I will just give you the key lessons. I have discussed about the practices followed for household expenditure survey and labor force survey by 5 countries: Australia, Canada, South Africa, UK, and the United States. The message is that, you see, one thing, in the household expenditure survey, all these countries except India, they are adopting a diary-based method of data collection for low-value items of consumption and which are frequently purchased. Unlike India, where we have everything is on oral inquiry. In the labor force survey, all these countries are following rotational design like NSS is doing through PLFS, urban areas. Of course, now rural areas also rotational design is there. One important observation is that all these countries, apart from rates and ratios, they are generating aggregates also. And changes in the aggregate. I mean, total number of employed, total unemployed, total out of labor force. But NSS traditionally avoided publishing aggregate estimate because population is underestimated and aggregates are also underestimated. But interestingly, I don't know whether because I mentioned all these things in my book or not, I find interestingly in the recent monthly bulletin, they have published aggregate numbers. Okay. And other one important thing is that many countries, particularly US and Australian Bureau of Statistics, they are using composite method of estimation. Because rotational design, if you use composite estimation by utilizing the data of the FSUs or households surveyed in the previous visits, that is supposed to give a much better estimate, particularly for the change parameters. But India is not following this. So this is a limitation of our survey. Okay. This chapter I will skip. It is design-based estimates. Coming to chapter 8 and 9. Chapter 8, it is on precision of estimates. As I told you, I have discussed these indicators. One is average MPC, state level estimates. All are state level and all India estimates. I have just documented where we are. What is the level of precision? Are we compatible with the estimates? These indicators I have taken. Average MPC, labor force participation rate, WPR and unemployment rate from PLFS. Then proportion of persons ailing and hospitalized and average expenditure per child worth from health survey. From education survey, I have taken the indicator of net attendance ratio for different levels of education. Then from disability survey, proportion of persons disabled, are the estimates reliable at the state level? Then agricultural household survey, proportion of agricultural households or absolute number, where we are we comfortable with the numbers? And about the average income of the farmer households. Then from enterprise survey, that is ASUS, and even NSS 67th and 73rd round enterprise survey, I have taken basically three indicators: number of establishments, estimated number of workers at the state level, and GVA per worker. GVA per worker is used for GDP calculations for the unorganized sector. So GVA per worker is an important variable indicator from the ASUS. The findings are like this. Average MPC figure state-wise very robust. I mean, relative standard error normally much below 5%. You see, up to 10%, somehow it is tolerable. But if RAC exceeds 10%, we have to, use the data carefully in the sense that the actual value may be quite different from the published result. It could be higher, it could be lower. LPR and WPR, female WPR estimates and female LPR estimates for certain very few states, 6-7 states and UTs. These are all smaller states and UTs. Their RAC is very high, more than 10%. So message is that probably we have to look into these states, and if necessary sample size may be increased or stratification may have to be changed. Unemployment rate, alarmingly, the position is that for most of the states, even if it is a very large state with a huge sample size, unemployment rate estimates have a high relative standard error. Most of them have more than 10% RAC. Quite a few states have more than 20% RAC. Its meaning is that the true value can deviate from the published result by more than 20 to 40%. This is alarming. And I think something has to be done here. Through improved stratification and all. I have discussed certain stratification techniques and remedial measures in the book. Hospitalized persons, 75th round 1-year survey estimates are quite good proportions, but 71st round was a 6-month survey, the RAC was high. So it would be preferable if we could have health surveys with a sort of annual year as the reference period, not 6. It has to be yearly survey, not 6-month survey. Then we are comfortable. Net attendance ratio, the message is that for lower levels of education, the net attendance ratio estimates state-wise are quite reliable. But problem is with the net attendance ratio estimates for a higher level of education, including secondary, higher secondary, post-higher secondary, where RAC exceeds more than 10% in many cases. Coming to enterprise survey, state-wise estimated number of establishments, estimated number of workers from the ASUS, considering all the industries taken together, manufacturing, trade and other services, their RAC is more than 10% in majority of the cases, which was not the case earlier in the earlier surveys, 67th round and 73rd round. We were much better. So what went wrong? I think these are methodological studies. the data producer must look into this aspect. I have documented it. But GPA per worker, which is used in the GDP calculations, they are quite comfortable, state-wise estimates. Of course, there are issues in certain states. Coming to chapter 9, I think I will conclude in maybe 5 minutes time. On sample size, as the message I have discussed, I think for smaller states and union territories, there is a necessity to increase the sample size, and also for few smaller states where female LFPR, WPR estimates are not so satisfactory. This is the message on sample size. Coming to underestimation of population, chairman mentioned it. You see, PLFS here, rural urban underestimation, I have noted here as compared to the projected population during the midpoint of the survey period. You see, the in urban areas, there is an issue of huge underestimation. PLFS 23-24, all India urban estimate is 28% lower than the projected population. And in certain states, I have indicated in blue, Chhattisgarh, Delhi, Jharkhand, the divergence is 41%, Kerala 43%, Jammu Kashmir 45%. It is really alarming. I think data producer must look into it, what is happening, whether frame is all right or not. I have given certain suggestions in the book. Okay. Coming to consumption expenditure, I think the message I have conveyed. It is time to come. I think we have to explore diary-based method of data collection for low value items and frequently purchased items, as advanced countries are doing. Experimentation with the splitting of the questionnaire is a good thing. I think in the HCS it has been done, but at the cost of comparability. Some remedy was suggested when I was member of the NSC, but I think it was not considered. I don't know for whatever reasons. Study on reference period, even 30-day, 365-day reference period, I think some pilot survey may be necessary to take a call whether for 365-day reference period, is it okay or 30-day would be better? And those items which are having 30-day reference period, whether 7-day may be better, I think some pilot survey is required. Another idea I have propagated in the book is that average MPC is much on the lower side, and super rich, affluent households, they are not adequately represented. This apprehension is always there. And we have the huge divergence with the NAS-based PFC estimates. So it would be useful, if possible, to carry out a survey of super rich households. That idea I have propagated. From there, one estimate you will get, and from the traditional survey, leaving out the super rich people, you could have traditional survey, two survey estimates can be combined. PLFS, few messages. Urban, the unemployment rate estimates are very poor, I have told you. It is worth considering whether a separate stratum of households having unemployed member could be considered or not. This was tried in some of the NSS rounds, early rounds, but this is not done now. Another is alternative stratification variable. PLFS uses the number of educated members as the stratification variable to form strata. But we have some article in EPW and all. I think many of you have read it. There we have demonstrated that number of adults is a much better stratification variable than number of educated members. I'm not going into details. I think some exercise is necessary here. I think there is a necessity to change the stratification variable. This is the message in the book. Female WPR, you look at this slide. I compared NSS 68th round 11-12 estimate with some 3 surveys and censuses. Census 2011, Labor Bureau Survey, and IHDS, India Human Development Survey. You see, these 8 states, NSS estimates are significantly lower. Female WPR. Bihar, alarming difference. What is happening, I don't know. I think this gives an indication that probably, since all the 3 sources are giving higher figure, probably there is a clue that NSS female WPRs are underestimated. This is rural, similarly same message for urban. And there is a suggestion here, some advanced countries are doing like US and Australia, they ask some probing questions. As Chair was telling, you see, whether any female member participated in agricultural activity, livestock rearing, or they helped some family person in enterprise. Yes, no type of question. If we add this and then you collect information on activity status, things may improve. Okay, some few data requirements. TLFS, I think certain questions need to be added if we have to estimate the size of the gig economy, and also if we have to measure the women's contribution in domestic services. And ICLS, 19th ICLS has expanded suggested to cover different forms of work through labor force survey. We are yet to implement that. I have proposed that I think it is high time to we go ahead with that recommendation. The quarterly changes, I will stop, I think, with this. Now we are releasing quarterly estimates for urban, and now rural also is introduced. And we have the monthly bulletins, as GR was telling, some of you must have seen. Our finding is that I have an article in the EPW that quarterly estimates, if you look at state-wise quarter to quarter figures, they don't differ significantly. I have in the last column indicated the difference is not statistically significant. For example, here, Andhra Pradesh, April to June 24, 44.4%. And next quarter, it became 44.5. These are same, no difference. Similarly, other states, I'm not going into details. If the difference is not statistically significant, its meaning is that although apparently you may feel that WPR has increased or unemployment rate has declined or increased, in the true situation, it could be something else. So we need to refine the survey strategy. These are the lessons. Similar is the monthly estimates. I have compared 4 bulletins now, April, May, June, July, and indicated my observation. Today I was calculating this. I find that you see urban estimates, you look at unemployment rate, 6.5, 6.9, 7.1, 7.2. WPR 15 plus, 47.4, 46.9, 46.8, 47.0. Most of these figures, month to month change, they are not statistically significant difference. Somewhere it is of course significant. And if we go to state level figures, situation will be further worse. So this asks the question, this flags the question of relevance of the high frequency survey. Of course, there is a utility. There is a utility. I no doubt deny that. But then, if we have to track the small change, our sample size and stratification, etc., needs to be accordingly designed so that we can detect the changes. This is the message in short. I think I will stop here. Thank you so much. Enterprise survey, I have already told you. There is a need for methodological studies. Some studies I have suggested in my book. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe you can remove that sharing. So we have 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Dr. Manna, for the presentation. So we have 10 minutes for question and answers. Anyone?
Am I audible, please?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Subbarao. I'm a retired advisor from Reserve Bank of India. I'm 87 years old. More as a consumer of NSS survey results, and also I worked in some of the working groups of the NSSO. So I have 2 issues which are worrying me. Number 1 is about the pooling of central and state sample estimates. The state governments are doing it on a matching basis, but there are no efforts to do the pooling of the central and state sample estimates by any organization. I think NSSO should make an attempt. If I remember right, I worked in the All India Data Investment Survey when the NSSO Data and Investment Survey was organized in collaboration with the Reserve Bank of India in the 81-82 survey. At that time, the Reserve Bank compiled the pooled estimates. But to my surprise, when I saw the estimates, the central sample estimates are much higher. For instance, proportion of households reporting indebtedness is reported at 40% in the case of central sample, and in the case of state samples, it was 20%. So like that, if there are wide differences between the central and state matching samples, I think it needs to be looked into, and there should be some agency to pool these estimates and present the pooled estimates. The second issue which is worrying me is about the survey of unincorporated enterprises. The survey of unincorporated enterprises, if I am right, they are replaced from the earlier directly or non-directly establishments with reference to manufacturing, trade, etc. Now, all these are put in one sample survey, giving the estimates of trade, manufacturing, and other services all combined together. Now, there is a need to get the estimates separately for manufacturing, separately for trade, and separately for other services. My feeling is that the sample size which is used in the annual survey of industries may not be giving efficient estimates compared to the earlier directory and non-directory estimates. Thank you, sir.
Should I respond just now, Chair?
You want to collect some questions and respond? That may be better.
Okay.
Any other?
I think in chat box some question may be there. I don't know if somebody can read out somebody.
So could I go?
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Firstly, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Sandhya Krishnan. I work at Azim Premji University in Bangalore. So my question is regarding the NSS consumption expenditure surveys. So we all are aware that after the change in the sampling design and the methodology to collect data, the 2011-12 survey and the ones that have happened recently, 22-23 and 23-24, are not strictly comparable. But at the same time, there have been studies that have compared these surveys. So my question is, what is the extent to which these surveys could be compared? Can we still do that? And what should be the aspects of this survey that are strictly not comparable from a researcher's point of view? Yeah, thank you, sir.
Anyone, any other question?
Yeah, maybe you can answer.
I'll respond to the questions and suggestions, whatever. Dr. Subbarao, you talked about whether any agency is there who can pool central and state sample data, etc., and what are the efforts. What I recollect is that NSSO has extended a lot of technical support to the state governments, that I must mention. In developing the software for pooling, they have also written various documents how the two sets of data should be pooled. In fact, on the MOSPI website long back, they also put a sort of note about the poolability of the estimates, which should be first tested before you go ahead with the pooling. And let me tell, some of the state governments did pooling exercise recently who are doing and all, but you are right that there is no regular sort of exercise pooling the data of two agencies, central and state sample. As you know, basically states were requested to participate in the survey so that, you see, we have the higher sample size and one can pool the two sets of results for improved estimates. Unfortunately, I agree with you that although state governments, some states have done it, but things have not been stabilized on a national level. Whether any agency can do that or not, I really don't know. Basically, MOSPI or even the NSC, they must discuss this, and if something can be done, because otherwise I feel, yes, I was also heading NSS for some time. It is a wastage of resource to some extent. So that much only I can tell. On the enterprise survey thing, yes, Dr. Rao, I am aware that earlier we had separate surveys on manufacturing, separate rounds on trade, separate surveys on services. I remember 34th round, 41st round. I'm not going into details. But yes, as I have demonstrated to the ASUS survey, even state level estimate of number of establishments, number of workers for three industries together, manufacturing, trade, services, they have high RAC. So you are very right that if we go into details by industry, trade, manufacturing, etc., things will be worse. And this I have documented in the book that a study should be taken up whether in the enterprise survey we have one industry in one round or all these industries together as we are doing with a very bitter experience. I think this call has to be taken. On the Premji University, Sundhaji, you said yes, as chairman also has said, and we are all aware. You see, because earlier schedule was taking too much of time, questionnaire, a conscious decision ministry took. In fact, ministry was advised by the concerned group and even NSC. I remember I was a part of the NSC when, at my insistence, this issue was brought before the commission when I was a member. That was my last meeting. Let me be very frank here. I am just telling. And I commented that if we are going to change, I welcome the change. It has to be done. And estimates will be much better. But we will lose comparability with the past data. And I gave a suggestion in that meeting, and I have a paper also subsequently written in the Hindu, giving my opinion on this, when the second round of consumption expenditure survey was going on, that in a subsample of FSUH, you see in the HCES, they had 10 panels, 10 subsamples of FSUH you can call. I said that at least in one subsample canvas the full traditional questionnaire. That will give the estimate. Based on that schedule, you will get one estimate based on old method, and based on the new method, you will get another estimate of MPC. And this will be giving a linking factor to maintain the comparability with the past series. This was my suggestion in short. That was agreed. After my departure, I think I am personal thing I am quoting, but still it is worth quoting. The decision was reversed again. Maybe due to some reasons, I don't know. I am not criticizing anybody. Yes, I feel that average MPC figure with the past and now cannot be compared. Cannot be compared on the assumption that the new approach will probably give a higher figure of this thing, and even accordingly comparability with the estimates of poverty ratios also will be lost to some extent. So what is the solution? I gave certain solutions, but we need to deliberate on this further. I think MOSPI has to take a role on this.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so we'll thank Dr. Manna for this presentation, answering the questions. Yeah, as you mentioned, the chapter 8 and chapter 9 are the most important. Of course, other chapters also useful. But particularly on the precision of the key estimates, I think one has to be, the researchers and others have to see the relative, the standard error and those things before using. Particularly if you go to the state level and then, below that. And then the other one, of course, he also said on expenditure, probably we should go the dairy-based method. So that we can have better estimates. And similarly, in WPR, also the probing questions and all will be very useful. So with this, once again, I thank Dr. Manna and all the participants, and also the EGROW Foundation for this very good webinar. And over to Dr. Vishal Das.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Chair, and it's a wonderful his intervention, his initial remarks and concluding remarks, and Dr. Manna. I really thank you very much. I am lost of the word how to express, because Dr. Manna, I have known him for over 40 years, but he has the ability to condense with sufficient width and the depth of the subject, and that is so charming. and it makes his exposition really excellent. And even I find a few others, I got the feedback, a non-statistician can understand what he says. And that's the greatness of his exposition. And I tell on behalf of the EGROW Foundation, all directors of EGROW Foundation, and my own behalf, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for agreeing to the chairing the session. I know how busy you are, but still you found time to spare for us. And Dr. Manna, I know he's holding 2-3 assignments together, and then his job. There is a great demand on competing demand on his time, and yet he found time to present. And it's very so academically enriching. I'm sure all over 110 participants were there. Even now, 101 are there. So everybody must have deepened this understanding. I deepened my understanding also. Though I am also an officer of Indian Statistical Service, but yet I got so many insights and foresight. So with these two words, I thank you, and I must tell that every good thing comes in the life comes to an end, and this session is no exception. With these few words, I thank you very much. And I also, before participants leave and you leave, the next session, which we hold on every Friday, the time is slightly variable, but Friday is fixed. And on the forthcoming Friday, that is on 5th September, we are going to have another very good session on foreign direct investment in retreat. So please let your friends and your group people know that this is going to be very encouraging and academically enriching. So, and we will circulate the flyer to all the concerned, and those who are willing to join will appreciate. And last but not the least, this EGROW webinar is as good as the participants' interest, and my thanks to all participants, and some are listening, some raise the question. Those questions also puts further depth to the subject and the content. So thanks one and all, and we will meet on this webinar virtually on the next Friday. Till then, goodbye and good night to everyone.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.